Good to go. Fantastic. My name is Christopher Raeburn. I'm the Global Creative Director for Timberland, and I'm so excited to be here today. We're really proud to be part of this, of course, amazing summit in Copenhagen. And above everything, we're so glad to be here to actually present our case study, really as to what Timberland's been doing within circularity and regeneration. We've been putting these topics really at the center of everything that we've been doing around our design and manufacturing approach. And we're really hoping that today is going to be all about inspiration, education for anyone looking to learn from the roadmap that we've been working towards. And yeah, it's all an exciting journey for us. So first of all, I just wanted to explain a little bit about how I came into Timberland and my inspiration personally. So I studied at the Royal College of Art all the way back in 2007. In fact, I graduated, and it was around the same time that Timberland released the first Earthkeeper boot. And I remember as a recent graduate at the time being absolutely sort of amazed and inspired that a brand on Timberland's level and on that scale would be thinking in such a responsible way. So the Earthkeeper boot at the time used an incredible amount of recycled materials. It used really responsibly sourced leather. So it's pretty unique. It was a real game changer. And as I say, that really inspired me at the time. And then when I go forward, scarily kind of 15 years to now be in the role that I'm in now, it's so inspiring to be back at a brand that really is now making a difference on a global scale. So the great news for Timberland is that actually sustainability's kind of been in our blood, I think, kind of green blood, if you will. Obviously, we have a tree as our logo. And yeah, for us, it's really something that we've had from the beginning within Timberland. And so we're so aware as a company that sustainability now isn't enough. You know, it's really aware and really apparent to all of us now that the world is in a pretty degraded state. So we know we want to work as a brand to actively restore nature and to do our best to actually be giving back, essentially. So it's this kind of insight and the reality of the world that we're living in that's really promoted our vision, essentially, as we look towards 2030. We've put out a bold goal and it's completely transparent. We want to be net positive and we actually want to give back more than we take. And today's all about that learning curve, and I'm really proud and really pleased. I'm going to have some fantastic guests along with me for the journey. And the first is Divya, who'll be speaking about how the journey started.
Great, thank you, Chris. So great to work with you. So yeah, so my name is Divya Aidoud, Director of Global Consumer and Shopper Insights. And just to start, you know, so clearly from a scientific perspective, we see that companies and governments really need to take positive action when it comes to climate change and the environment. And as a brand, you know, Chris alluded to this, we bleed green blood. It's very much a part of our DNA, and it's been there from really the origins. The difference today is that we're clearly seeing this rise in conscious consumerism, where consumers are increasingly concerned about the environment and they're increasingly thinking about their personal consumption choices. So they're asking those tough questions and beginning to wonder, like, how is this product made? Where are the materials sourced? Who are the people behind the product? What's going to happen with this product when I'm done with it? And so we see this shift happening, you know, where people are more conscious. And there's lots of data and evidence to support this. So from an attitudinal perspective, we know consumers are saying that they want to start to buy more sustainably, that they're willing to pay more for eco-friendly offerings. In fact, there was a study that was done with Global Web Index, and it was done with about 170,000 users between the ages of 16 to 64. And people were asked, you know, would you be willing to pay more for an eco-friendly product or less for something that was less eco-friendly? And in that, about 50% to 2/3 of consumers there said they would overwhelmingly pay more for an eco-friendly product. So that mindset we see, and we certainly see it's more pronounced with Gen Z. Now, many will say, who's not going to say that they want to buy something more eco-conscious? So it's not just, we're not just seeing this from an attitudinal perspective, we're also seeing it in actual behavior. So List, I'm sure many people here are familiar with, but it's one of the largest global online fashion search platforms, and consumers can go on there and search through different fashion stores. And they recently published their 2020 Conscious Fashion Report. And in that, there's lots of data to suggest that people are actually adopting these behaviors that support the mindset. So one of the statistics that I like to mention is since 2019, we've seen a 37% increase in people searching for sustainability. So it's gone from 27,000 searches on sustainability a month in 2019 on average to about 32,000. So that's a pretty dramatic increase in a pretty high level of volume of search. We're seeing increases on searching for organic cotton, increases in searching for recycled plastic and eco t-shirts. So clearly, you know, we're seeing this shift happen. So it's good ultimately. So that's today. But as we look to the future, we embarked in this project called Front End Innovation, and Chris is going to talk a little bit about that in more detail later. But what we learned from that is that today people are being conscious, but the expectations that we expect in the future are going to increase as more and more brands start talking about sustainability and talking about what happens. Consumers' expectations will also become more elevated. So in the future, what we see is that it won't be enough for brands to just do less harm. There's going to be an expectation that consumers are actually, or brands are actually doing more and making things better. And I think, you know, for us, this is what's really exciting about Timberland. I mean, it's really been a part of this brand's DNA. We've been guided by this higher purpose. We talk a lot about our purpose of making things better, doing better product, building stronger communities, building a greener future. And so, you know, we're really positioned for that future, and it's just really an exciting time to be on the brand. So I'll turn it back over to Chris, who's going to talk about our vision and how we see that coming to life.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Divya. So exactly as we heard, I'd really like now to talk a little bit more about the work that we're doing, really as we're looking to, let's say, shift Timberland into really being a brand of the future. We have a new creative vision, and it's really about the intersection of fashion and nature that really makes us completely unique. And we're really looking at that unique kind of sweet spot, if you will, and the passion that goes behind it, and really looking at a new definition really for fashion, where we really believe that there's an opportunity here to have a much more vibrant way of manufacturing, of designing, etc., really doing better through everything that we're working through with Timberland. So we really think we can push the boundaries for ourselves. And really importantly for us, Divya teed it up as well, that this is about working with our community. It's about working with our customers and really learning and evolving as we go through that process together. I think it's so important in the world that we live in today that we approach things really in a much more collaborative way. So as I mentioned earlier, we have this new 2030 vision. We've set that bold goal around our products actually being net positive and actually giving back to nature by 2030. And you know, that's a really big challenge. Let's be really honest, and it's a really long-standing sort of commitment as we look towards 2030. But we know with the sort of history that we have within Timberland, that love of the outdoor, the heritage that we have, we know that this is so important. So this is all about driving, of course, innovation as we go towards that. But I just really want to explain how, really, because of course, hopefully, as I mentioned earlier, this is all about the case studies. So for us, we're really looking at that bold goal in terms of two routes. One, where the first thing is about really looking at our products being designed, of course, towards circularity. It's a big topic at the moment. It's, of course, something that we strongly believe in and we're working towards. And we essentially want to be moving towards our products being zero waste and moving towards zero impact, ready for 2030. But we know that's not enough. You know, that's what we're so aware of, you know, with everything that we're seeing, the work coming through from David Attenborough, the reality of everything that we're seeing within the media and the research that we're doing. So over and above that, we know that we want to start moving towards actually sourcing 100% of our virgin natural materials through regenerative practices. So actually sourcing those materials, and we use so many of them, and I'll come on to that later, sourcing in a regenerative way, we believe we can actually tip the scales past net zero to actually being net positive. So that's a really sort of exciting for us, exciting topic for us internally, and that's how we see that we can really kind of change the paradigm. And we also know that we can't do this overnight. I mentioned earlier around Earthkeepers being such a inspiration for me as a recent graduate all the way back in 2007. We're now bringing it back. It's one of the big things that I've been working on along with an amazingly talented team in the background. So as of Fall Winter 20, we'll then be bringing Earthkeepers actually back as a platform. Really, it's our highest iteration of eco-innovation. And I'll actually be showing a few products later on. And we know that through the sort of the testing, if you will, and then scaling through Earthkeepers, we can start to challenge ourselves. So for example, already for Fall Winter 20, we'll be releasing our first completely regenerative leather boot. We'll also be releasing a fully recycled leather boot. So it's actually made using all of the scraps of leather, ground up, reground, then actually made into a product. And this is all about us testing, learning, and then scaling. So before I introduce a really very special guest and someone that we're now become very close to within Timberland, I'd just like to talk a little bit about the sort of innovation process and the research that happened behind the scenes, really, as we were looking towards that 2030 goal and how all of this came together. And I think the thing before I jump into this is just, I really want to emphasize how collaborative this has been. So of course, internally within Timberland, I mentioned earlier about the green blood. When I started back in 2018, we already had so many people that were passionate about sustainability. They wanted to do the right thing. They were really, really into anything around products, around the way that we were manufacturing. But we also knew that we wanted to bring in expertise from the outside world as well. So it's about, again, that collaborative process. So I've kind of broken things down just into three parts of how we went about this. And the first was, of course, we looked in depth at researching and sort of collecting as much data and really understanding which parts of our business had the most impact. And for us within Timberland, this won't come as a surprise, we use a lot of leather, we use a lot of cotton, and we use a lot of rubber. So really understanding those impacts was the first step. And then really just starting to think, as we then went into step two, well, okay, if we've got the idea and we've got the data on what the biggest opportunity and the biggest sort of impacts are going to be, then it's about thinking, well, how can we rethink those impacts into being the most positive that they can be? And that led us on to the journey around, of course, regeneration and the fact that we could truly go from this degraded method that we work within currently in a lot of practices around the world, to then truly moving to this much more positive way of manufacturing, of agriculture, particularly, of course, around the rubber, leather, and cotton that I mentioned earlier. And then point three is all about identifying the right partners to work with. And this for us is something that we've been fostering, we've been growing anyway throughout Timberland. It's all, as I mentioned, about finding the right partners, collaborating, and ultimately learning as we go through that process. So it's always been something that we've been very proud of. We, in fact, co-founded, for example, the Leather Working Group. And we really see then that the next step on this would be around finding the right partnership within, of course, Regen. So that sort of step took us towards an amazing institute called the Savory Institute, and they're all about promoting and again measuring the benefits of regenerative agriculture. So really understanding actually how this is going to work, how it can scale in a positive way, looking at food and fashion and understanding all of that stuff that goes into stuff, and then how it can be done in a much more positive way. So I've spoken for quite a long time there, but hopefully it's really good information. Hopefully it was broken down into quite an easy way with the 1, 2, 3 as to how we've done this. So I'm going to be quiet for a minute and I'm going to hand over to Jim from Other Half Processing. And we're going to then just understand a little bit more about the amazing work that you guys have been doing and a bit more about the partnership. Thank you, Jim.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I really appreciate being asked to be a part of this panel with you and Divya. As you said, I'm the founder and CEO of Other Half Processing. Honestly, being here at the Copenhagen Fashion Summit does feel a little bit full circle for me. The last Copenhagen Summit I was a part of was the UN Climate Summit in 2009. I was there with farmers from around the world to promote regenerative agriculture's inclusion in the global climate accords, although frankly, we didn't have a lot of success at that time. Well, I'm disappointed it's only virtual this time. I'm very excited to be back in town 11 years later, discussing the same topic, which now is increasingly recognized as part of the climate solution. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and how we got here. My siblings and I were raised on a family farm in the state of Nebraska, in the center of the US, by parents who were early regenerative agricultural leaders. What makes regenerative farming systems different is the prioritization of practices that improve and build soil. And that has a lot of positives, including better fertility, better water holding capacity, which helps in times of drought and heavy rains, better biodiversity and wildlife habitat, and the thing we're all really focusing on about this, which is so important, which is the ability to actually help reverse climate change. Now, there's a lot of practices that are regenerative in agriculture, but one of the most important has to do with grasslands and how cattle and other livestock are grazed. When that is done in a way that mimics nature, which means that the cattle's movement is managed so that they graze heavily in a spot for a period, and then that grass is allowed to rest afterwards, the plants are able to actually extract carbon from the atmosphere and draw it down into the soil, which helps those plants' own growth, but also results in all those great things I mentioned earlier, including countering climate change, literally. Now, my brother Mark and I founded OHP to support this kind of agriculture that we grew up with, that's better for cows, people, and the planet. And the support is needed because while cattle raising can have these great outcomes, it's not common in the US or most of the world right now, and that's mostly due to economics. Our mission at OHP is to incentivize regenerative farming by helping get more profits back to the farmers, ranchers, and native communities that raise the livestock in these ways that are better for all of us. We do this by adding value to the other half of their livestock, the valuable parts that are left after meat processing. Of these byproducts, the hide for leather is usually the most valuable. But regenerative producers and the processors haven't been able to get paid much, if anything, for that hide or the other parts, which has really reduced overall farming profits for these folks. Now, and this is due to several things. I mean, the first is just that most regenerative processing is done in smaller and medium-sized facilities, and those size facilities are disadvantaged compared to the larger transnational meat companies and their massive plants that not only process meat, but the other things like hides inside. But making matters worse, right now, the global hide market is really still at historical lows, with the result that many, if not most, of the small processors in the US that work with regenerative farmers and ranchers have actually recently started to have to pay to dispose of hides, many of which are buried in landfills. With Timberland's leadership, OHP is flipping that dynamic to make regenerative hides actually worth more. And this was possible because of Timberland's commitment to sustainability and its willingness to reimagine their leather supply from the ground up. This support allowed OHP to create and grow a traceable hide sourcing program back to the farm that directly rewards regenerative farmers and ranchers. Here's how it works, basically. We work with those processors to purchase those hides that are verified from the cattle of our partner farmers and ranchers, which we then transport to a tannery within Timberland's supply chain. But in addition to buying the hide, we make a direct payment to the farmers and ranchers that helps us with farm traceability, but most importantly, ensures that those producers benefit directly from that sale. And this payment is a very clear signal for farmers and ranchers about the growing financial value of regenerative production in the market, as well as out in their pastures and fields. And our intent in it is to provide encouragement to those producers and to get more acres and more farmers, ranchers, and native communities transitioning to regenerative production. Finally, Timberland's introduction and commitment to a traceable regenerative leather supply sends an incredibly strong message to the rest of the industry and to consumers of what's actually possible today. We can support these kind of climate-friendly actions, not just with what we eat, but with our shoe, apparel, and other purchasing choices. And that's something the broader industry needs to embrace and something consumers need to demand from them. Thank you so much for your time. Back to you, Chris.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jim. More positive for cows, people, and the planet. Absolutely love it. You know, that's why we're so on board and so excited, obviously, to be working alongside with yourselves. So the thing with all of this, and the reason that we're so proud to be speaking today, is that we're of course very excited about the journey that we're taking. We're also very open to say that actually we need to be working with partners across the supply chain. We really hope to be inspiring other brands, designers, other parts of the industry all the way through to make this positive change together. We know we can't do it alone. So that's what this is all about. Before going back to Divya, I'd also just like to say that, again, hopefully a big theme throughout all of this is about transparency, it's about communication, and it's about collaboration. So we're really going to be welcoming any questions very soon. So if anyone wants to get those in, please feel free. We're going to have 10 minutes or so at the end. And with that, Divya, I'll hand back to yourself.
That's great. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I mean, I think hopefully it's, you're really hearing that this is much more than just one person, right? So one of the things I wanted to start off, or in my closing part here, is that, when we think about consumers, we don't think of them as a singular person, right? It is about a community. We know one consumer can't make the change, one brand cannot make the change. It's really about working together. So for us, it's really about our consumers is our community. They're an extension of us. And that's the only way that we're really going to make change. So that's, first and foremost, I really want to double click that particular point. As we think about sustainability, it's a huge space. And I think we know very clearly that the understanding of the space is still pretty early when it comes to the communities that are out there, and that there's a lot of education that needs to happen still. So, driving education is going to be key for us, so really making sure that we're distilling concepts in a simple, clear way, engaging, and ultimately hopefully inspiring, where people want to join us in our journey. That's really going to be important. And so especially if we want to really achieve our vision and goals for being net positive. And so how we're going to do that is really, we're going to work with our community. I mean, as I talked about at the beginning, our purpose has been about working together. So we're going to work with the community. We're going to bring them in. We're going to pressure test our communication. We're going to see that people understand. And ultimately, our hope is that by doing this and elevating awareness and getting more and more folks to understand what we're about and what our vision is, making sure they understand what regenerative is, circular and all, they will join us. And as they go and make those choices of product to buy, they'll be a lot more discerning. They're going to really pressure test, the product, like how is it made? What is it actually doing for the environment? We believe that that's what's going to happen in working with us. So, that's a win ultimately for not just our community. It's for us as part of that community. And ultimately it's a win for the environment. So we're really excited about the future and look forward to seeing how we achieve it. So I'll turn it back to you, Chris.
Fantastic, Divya. And importantly, you mentioned products. This is one of our first completely regenerative leather boots. So we think it looks amazing. It will be coming out this fall. And again, it's a big step towards that much more positive future. So with that, I'd like to kind of wrap up before we do move on to any questions that might come through. Please do feel free to type away. I think you've got the keyboard on the right-hand side where you can ask any questions through. So hopefully today has been inspiring, it's been interesting. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I think above everything, we've learned how important sort of within Timberland, both internally and externally, how important collaboration has been through all of this. We genuinely believe that we have this opportunity to change the paradigm. And we know that we need to kind of be bold and brave and to act importantly with our community to do that. And so hopefully, as I mentioned, this has been inspiring and we can all work together towards this much more positive future. So with that, I'll check if we do have any questions that have come through at all. All right. So I kind of had to play a compare here. So I'm going to ask a question to Jim, which is we've got one through here. So how does the intake of carbon into the soil compared to the methane emissions from cattle ranching? That's a good one.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of discussion around that, and there's a lot of science starting to look at that. I think overall, what we see is that that you get a net positive as you're looking for. We've got a great ranch in Georgia, White Oak Pastures, that actually had a whole life cycle assessment done on their production. And it was found that actually, yes, that because of their cattle production system actually ended up sequestering more carbon overall, including any methane emissions that came out of the animals. overall compared to, and more carbon went into the soil than the cows emitted. So it was a net positive, actually, if that makes sense.
It would be good, Jim, just for, obviously you're an expert in this field, but let's assume some people out there, maybe they haven't heard so much on regen. So I think it would almost be good just to go back to basics. Every day's a school day, so it'd be really good just to understand it in layman's terms. Yeah.
Completely, yeah. The question is really because when cows are out in the environment, I mean, what I was talking about is what happens with the grass and the soil, how we can get carbon down into the soil through photosynthesis and how the plants actually work, and making it as simply put as possible. But the other side is animals, like the rest of us, emit things. And what they were pointing out correctly is that a cow actually emits methane from how it digests food. That methane is one of the byproducts that comes out, kind of like with us, but a lot more because of how their stomachs work. And so the question was, does a cow who's out living on grass for a long time actually put more carbon in the soil through how they graze than how much they personally emit as an animal throughout their life? And I think that, there's still a lot of question fully, but these farms and more research is showing that actually it is a net positive if you do these regenerative grazing systems right. Is that better? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And for anyone wanting to do a little bit of homework, I think both Jim and I, and of course Divya as well, we really recommend, there's an amazing documentary that's just come out on Netflix called Kiss the Ground. And it's got Woody Harrelson, in fact, narrating it. And it's, again, a really accessible way to just understand the benefits of this subject. So I really would advise getting on and having a watch of that. So we've also had a couple more questions, and I'll kind of answer them straight away, which is one directed towards us. Within Timberland, are we considering exploring more plant-based leather alternatives, pineapple, mushroom, as sort of part of the potential solution to lower our environmental impact? And the simple answer is that within Timberland, we look at everything that we can possibly be doing to reduce our impact. And these innovations that are happening around plant-based, absolutely, we're looking at. We also pride ourselves on the quality and the longevity of Timberland products. And it's really important that we do the testing in particular to make sure a new product or new material coming onto the market, it's going to actually, really live up to the standards that we need within Timberland. So absolutely, for us, it's about finding the right balance, I would say, of the innovation, then of course mixed with that quality that we need. And then there's one here, but I'm going to open it up to us all. So other than regenerative agriculture, what other net positive practices are we working on, or could businesses be working on, essentially to shift the whole business towards positive? So seeing things up from my side, I think one of the things that's often overlooked is even the power supplies, and looking upstream, from even thinking with office buildings, the design studio, all of those things, and making sure that's all being done in a responsible way. But it would be cool, Divya and of course, Jim, if you have any other thoughts that aren't just about the cows.
Go ahead, Divya.
I think in terms of other opportunities to build on that positive, I think there's a lot more to go here. I would say that I would leave this one to the experts, to be frank. This is not necessarily my wheelhouse, but I think circularity is certainly one place that we're looking at. There might be opportunities there to build net positivity. So I think there's a lot more to be discovered here and explored. So more to come there, really.
Absolutely. So really, of course, circularity that we've mentioned, the regen side, but of course a lot around not just recycled, but recyclable, and then take back schemes, all of those things, of course, that we're looking into. And to wrap things up, at Timberland, we're so proud that one of our commitments has been to plant 50 million trees within actually the next 3 to 4 years, and we're well on track to do that. So of course, all of these things working together, we really hope we're going to work towards a much more positive future. So thank you so much for joining us. We really hope that this has been inspiring, and we hope that you'll come along on the journey. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.